All right, now for the best segment on Zero Hanger TV, our lovely mailbag, where you can submit your questions, takes, or thoughts via our Instagram page each week. And we've got a couple for today's episode. First one is a question from ZPies 2024. Who will win the Brownlow? I think Goulden is what ZPies reckons. Not a bad start from Errol. Heaney's probably got a few votes under his name. Chad Warner probably ahead of him as well. Although Errol probably a good chance to get one or two over the last couple games. I still like the Bont. Like, they're not playing amazingly, and he always is. So if the Dogs can find a few wins here and there, I think he'll be hard to stop. Still can't rule out Dacos, I would have thought. But yeah, Butters, Sarong, if those two can contend for top 8 spots, probably expect more so from Port Adelaide. But if Freo can continue their winning ways for large portions of the season, it's going to be hard to go past Caleb Sarong as well.
Yeah, I think just with the Swans, I mean, Gordon definitely, he surprised everyone last year with, I think it's his 3rd or 4th place finishing in the Brownlow. So there's no shadow of a doubt that he can't, poll votes. The umpires obviously love him. I watched the Essendon Swans game, and his work rate through the arcs is phenomenal. It's probably second to none. His ball delivery, his ball use is just as good, if not the best in the competition. And it's a reason why he's probably so damaging, and why umpires probably see him as more of a poll getter, as a 3 voter, as opposed to maybe a 1 or even a none. But with that, I think the Swans have such a balanced output, especially from the first 3 weeks of their season. But going forward, if they're going to be genuine contenders, they've got players, as we mentioned, Isaac Heaney, Tom Papley. We recorded that he was our best, in terms of the MVP rankings. They've got Callum Mills to come back in. Brodie Grundy will pinch in with a few big votes. Logan McDonald is starting to find his feet as the number 1 forward. Yeah. At the Swans. So there's a lot of players there that could potentially steal votes off one another. That's not to say that it hasn't happened before. I think Nat Fyfe won the Brownlow in 2015 when the Dockers made a prelim final, and probably expected to make that granny and actually win it. So it's definitely doable for a team that's generally up the top. But my tip is still going to be Tom Green from the Giants. He started the season off, in terrific fashion. He's leading our MVP rankings. He's probably up there with, maybe 7 to 9 votes so far in his first 3 weeks. He does it on the inside, does it on the outside. He's starting to really hit the scoreboard now, which is a big tick for a midfielder. He's so lovable to watch. He, as I said, he can just win the contested ball, but then has the ability to spread so quickly and get included in that chain of scores for the Giants going forward. So yeah, I think he's my tip in the early part of the season.
He's going to be a hard one to look by for sure. Take from Xander 99.94. Archie Perkins will be a top 5 player in 2 years. Don't hate it. Can't rule it out. Wouldn't have it, but what he showed in round 1 certainly suggests he's taking a step this year, or should be taking a step this year. And in 2 years' time, he's in his 6th year, so he's 23, 24 years of age. He's probably going to be hitting that spot like we have mentioned with your Greens and your Gouldens, Rouse and Sarongs and Butters. So he's going to be in that window. I think he's the same age as Goulden, to be fair, but probably a bit of a different role. I don't hate it. Like I said, top 5 player in the comp, guy who can kind of be pretty explosive through the midfield, have an impact, score forward of the ball. I don't hate it.
I think the only thing with that is if Brad Scott and the Bombers kind of take the leash off him, given the fact they've got Zach Merritt, Darcy Parish, Dylan Shield to come back in, Jai Caldwell, Will Setterfield, Ben Hobbs. There's a lot
Sardis as well. They got a lot of midfielders.
Yeah, there's a lot of midfielders there that probably be played out of position, and I don't think it's been any shock to anyone that Perkins probably has been playing that half forward role, which I believe is probably the hardest position on an AFL ground. But as we saw in round 1 against the Hawks, if you give him the opportunity, he's more than capable of, hitting the scoreboard, gathering 20, 25, maybe even 30 disposals, winning clearances that are not just any clearances, but effective clearance at the front of the stoppage, and really creating that overlap, that handball movement that can score goals quickly from. But I think, for him to become a top 5 player in 2 years, I think that's where the growth will be. It's more the positional and the time in the midfield. I don't think he can be a top 5 player from the half-forward flank, unfortunately. But if he's given the opportunity, which we've seen that he can produce some sort of performances like, maybe a Marcus Bontempelli or an Errol Goulden or, Chad Warner through the midfield, that's where he will see tremendous growth. So he definitely has the potential, but obviously it's just the opportunity he needs to get in order to do so.
For sure. And last one as well, take from Paul Trevelyan. Gaff dropped and Darling benched after another chapter in Eagles' rebuild. Well, yes, kind of a big story, obviously, Gaff, like such a long servant for the club. It doesn't mean he's never playing again, but it is going to be pretty interesting to see, when his next senior game comes. Been a champion for West Coast for a long time. And yeah, one of the very few veterans that kind of rolled over into this year obviously was contracted. Darling is another one we'll touch on in a sec, but I saw Shuey, Natanui, and Hernal leave, and you'd think the similar is going to happen for a Gaff and a Darling and a McGovern over this year or next. So yeah, obviously they need to bring in the youth, both on field and through list management, but you can't cut all of your veterans at once. I think this is probably going to be a nice little clip for Gaff, who I think did okay in the Waffle practice game anyway. So he'll continue to press for selection, which is I think all Adam Simpson can ask for at this point.
Yeah, I think the call, maybe as brutal as it might seem, is probably one that is necessary. He genuinely didn't have a good performance in round one. So normally when that happens, maybe if you're a younger player, you might be given a secondary week just to maybe find your feet and another opportunity. But because they've got a host of young players really coming through the ranks right now, and they're in the at the beginning of a rebuild, if not prior to, they do need to give these young kids some experience and exposure at the level, because they're going to be hopefully the next premiership players for the club. And unfortunately, Andrew Gaff's not going to be that. So if he, is around the club and he's doing the leadership things and the team things where he's constantly guiding these young players that will eventually take over his position on the wing or even through the midfield, that's probably now his role. Not to play, 23 games, I think, of the year and, be best on. It's now kind of guiding through that next generation, that next wave of young players who will be taking over the Eagles. So I did like the call from Simpson, but, hopefully he does get back in the side, because we know he can be a really good player, and they do need some experience on field as shown by the opening 2 rounds. But if he's not performing at the same token, he probably shouldn't be playing in that final 23.
Yeah, and the Darling stuff was a pretty quiet game on Sunday. You think maybe he wouldn't have played if Oscar Allen didn't get injured. They had to bring in Harry Barnett to help with the ruck and allow Bailey Williams to play a little bit more forward here and there. But those two can kind of interchange through those two roles. Ryan Marrick off the bench, probably could have been an outcome if Oscar Allen wasn't injured, that Darling also didn't play on the weekend. And they have Allen with Williams and Barnett and Marrick kind of in that front third. So that was kind of an interesting one as well. But we'll wrap up there for another episode of Zero Hanger TV. Thank you once again for watching. You can always tune in on your podcasting platforms on YouTube and as well on zerohanger.com.au.